All right, so hi, I'm here with my friend Tyler, who has an
Hello.
amazing shiny wall behind her, and we're just gonna dig into a little bit of talk about wellness, mindfulness, how that is implemented in Tyler's life and her path so far, and how she uses different tools to kind of get through life and what it looks like if she strays from the path and just overall what that looks like for her. So hi Tyler.
Hi, Amanda.
Thank you for being here. I'm going
Yeah.
to start in the same kind of question that I did in my last little video that I did with this, the dinner party scenario. So you're at a dinner party, you don't know everybody, but you feel really at ease. It's a great day.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm confident, I'm doing well. And then you meet someone and you have to introduce yourself without saying what you do for a living. What would you say?
Ooh.
So you can't say, I
Okay.
work here.
Right. I love that because it's such an American thing to be like, this is my occupation and that's how I define myself. But I would say, hello. My name is Tyler. I'm from Detroit and I'm currently living in LA where I am working on how to make my body and my environment a safe space for me and living as authentically as possible.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if that's exactly what I would say at a dinner party. That's kind of a lot. But
Let's just assume everyone here is like open-minded to hearing the most
yeah,
bizarre.
the most like philosophical.
Right.
Yes, okay.
And so, and that I will say is you, like I've talked about, like kind of when we know each other, just because you used to come to yoga classes that I taught at Om Yoga in Ann
Yes.
Arbor. So that's how we know one another. And it's also like, it's a weird thing as the yoga teacher because like that dynamic is really strange in that everyone comes in. The etiquette is to throw down your mat, be quiet, and I speak. And it's always made me really uncomfortable because it's like this weird power imbalance that I do not like. Um, and oftentimes I would like I like conversation, and so I'd come into a class and
Yeah.
say like, what do y'all want to do today? How you feeling? What's going on? And often, especially in Ann Arbor, it's a lot of younger people who probably saw me, the same age as their mom, and they're just like, blink, blink, like I'm like, it's okay. I'm not gonna yell at you, but like trying to keep it
Yeah.
conversational is something that I've always tried to do in a yoga class. And you were always somebody who came in and was just like, hey, hi, and just like so genuinely lovely. And I kind of wanted to be like, I don't want to teach. Can we just talk? Like, tell me what you do.
Oh, oh my
And then,
gosh.
yeah. So then to see what kind of what you put out there on your social media stuff, because you were a fantastic poet.
Thank
In
you.
things that and just the things that you share about your reading, what you're getting out of. I have like screenshots of like, I got to get that book, or I want, like, because
Oh my
it's
gosh.
very interesting, and you're a really wonderful writer. And
Oh, thank
you are an old
you.
soul. I don't know if are you one of those kids that like old women in church would be like, you're an old soul, honey, because
I have gotten that a lot.
that's what I get
Many
from you. I'm
times.
like, there's a lot in there. So,
Oh, that just warms my heart so much, especially coming from you because I feel like I've told you this before, but I've just gone to so many yoga teachers, even in Europe, and like you just always are like the yoga teacher that is so playful and just makes me feel like I'm not performing. I mean, a lot of yoga teachers will say, it's a practice, not a performance, but with you, I feel like you genuinely embody that. You're like, if you fall out, that's just how it is, just get back, just things like that, where I just feel so safe in your yoga classes. So just had to put that out there because, all these compliments I have to say my truth too.
Well, I'm glad you felt comfortable, and that's certainly, the goal. One of the many goals is like I want to give you the yoga, but without, yeah, it should be fun. It should be fun exploring,
Yeah.
what we can do is my approach. So my next question for you is like, and I want to not just like put this in a capsule of yoga specifically.
Hmm.
So because I want to just make it clear that obviously there's other modalities of movement and mindfulness
Yes.
beyond yoga. And sometimes people are like, oh, I came to yoga after so many years of, whatever sport, and they kind of find similarities in that headspace. So I don't want to just assume yoga or whatever is, opened up new doors for you that may have been open well before you ever set foot into your yoga practice. So what's your experience with that? One with like just embodying movement
Yes.
uh, for well-being. Does that make sense?
Yes. It makes so much sense. I'm actually talking about this in my next podcast episode coming out tomorrow. But I feel like movement and well-being are just hand in hand for me. Um, and it's just so crucial for my mental health. And one of my favorite ways to like really move my body after like a period of stagnation or just anything that's going on that I really need to work through in a vigorous way that's still low impact is a cycling class.
Mhm.
And I love Soul Cycle, and I'm sometimes embarrassed to say it because it is a very like traditionally stereotypical fitness that I don't necessarily connect with, and it can come off as just like cheesy and just like they say it's not a workout class, it's a sanctuary. But I genuinely do feel like some type of you know whatever you want to call it, like other other type of power when I'm in the class, and like the instructor is just very much so like very similar to how your yoga style is. Or like you're on a bike that goes nowhere, don't take yourself seriously. So many instructors will say that. I feel like it's such a lighthearted approach to fitness where you're just dancing and you get really sweaty. And so Soul Cycle was like the first fitness class that I really felt like I could just not feel like I have to perform in
Mhm.
outside, because I don't really consider yoga fitness. I consider it more of like a mind body movement situation. And I know the origins of yoga, it was never meant to be a fitness class. But so I will say, like, in terms of traditional fitness, Soul Cycle has my heart. But other ways that I love to move my body include walking, swimming, especially in the ocean if I can, and just like dancing. Dancing is my all-time favorite way to move. And I live alone, and I'll whenever if I can't make it a Soul Cycle or just want to do something quick, I'll just play some music and dance in my apartment. It feels like a ritual. Yes.
Yes, yes, that's so good. Right. Because it's about moving energy, isn't it? Like you talked about being
Yes.
stagnant, and it's just like,
Yeah,
ah,
we just need the fresh oxygen, like the body to move, and yeah, and just like blood pumping.
right,
10 out of 10.
right. So you're a fairly young person. I can say that from where I sit right now. um, at, at what age, or are there any points in your life so far that you kind of pinpointed or noticed? Um, Gosh, how do I even want to say that? Like the something deeper, or whether that be within your own body, or
Hmm.
whatever community you grew up in, your family structure of feeling like some sense of connection um, with something bigger, if that's even a thing.
Yeah. No, it's totally a thing. And I love talking about this because I feel like yoga was one of the very first ways I started to cultivate this connection to something greater and something beyond basic, human comprehension. But I will say that in 2018, that's actually when I first started going to too. But the summer before my first class in September, I went through something with a boy, and I am still like, I don't like how that was like my first introduction to, realms outside of this one, but that was a plan the universe had for me. Just because things didn't end well with him, but basically, it was the first time I felt in my body like there's just something, and it wasn't just like the traditional like butterflies in the stomach or like a crush. Like I've had things like that, but I was having like shared dreams with him, and like things were just very, very like all the circumstances that had to line up for us to meet. I was like, okay, there's something here that I need to study. And that was my first introduction to modern day spirituality and like getting into my body, because that's when my body started going through I started becoming a lot more aware of my body. I also read A New Earth by Eckhart
Mm.
Tolle that
Uh-huh.
summer too. And so it was just like a deep dive into um spirituality and concepts like that. And so that's when I started to really get into yoga and really feel like these sensations in my body aren't just sensations, like they are connecting me to a broader purpose. So that's how it all started.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
I
amazing.
was 19,
Okay.
18, 19. Yeah, I was 19.
Mhm, mhm. Nice. And so from that point, um, like well, one, we're gonna plug your podcast because I did listen to your
Yes.
first episode and it's uh so good. I so appreciated the conversational tone
Thank you.
and as someone who is like now in this weird place of teaching yoga to a camera, when I first
Yeah.
started, I felt so like this is weird, and now I'm like I just look at my camera like I'd look at 20 people on their yoga mats, like hi, what do you got?
Yeah.
Like laughing at my own shtick, and I just loved how you were like. I'm assuming you were probably alone, and you were just like this
Yeah.
fluid but sensible, totally followed like the stream of consciousness that was conversational and so
Oh, thank you. That was
relatable.
my
So
goal.
yeah, it was really natural. And I was like, this is great. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So a lot of
Amazing.
podcasts. So well done. Well done. So from that period of when you were 19 or so, what is what does this kind of spiritual self-care mindfulness path look like for you in that time?
Yes. Um, in short, all over the place. It was so at first I was like, I want to dedicate my life to yoga and just do yoga forever, because that was how I felt most connected to the spiritual realms and like my body at the time. But then I went through a very um scary period where it was just a lot of grief in my life and just a lot of stagnation. I keep going back to that word because I feel like that is when I feel the most out of alignment with my body, and subsequently out of alignment with like my mental health and things of that nature. So I was still doing my yoga every single day, and I kind of just reached a plateau. And at that point, I was just like really confused because I thought yoga was gonna, be my cure all to life. I was like, it's gonna save my life. And whenever I feel bad, I just need to turn to yoga. But that's when I started to get introduced to a more holistic approach to spirituality and like wellness and mindfulness and things like that. Because I realized that, it's not just showing up on the mat. It's like what you bring to the mat, and it's like who you are outside of the mat. And I know something you used to say in one of your classes is like, like, or you said something along these lines. I don't want to like say this is what you said, but I remember you saying something like, like the way you do yoga, you can like do life this way. And that's something that I didn't realize. And so I had to like venture out and just go out into other things. I think this was 2019, leading up into 2020 is when I started to try other fitness classes. And I also tried out alternative forms of healing like Reiki and what else did I do? I'm sure I did a few other things. I went to somatic therapists, but what I've been loving lately, as of late, from 2018 up until now, is sound therapy
Mm,
and sound bowls. And there's this sound bowl YouTuber. Her name's Allison. I can find her last name if you want to know who she is. And I listen to her almost every single morning and night, and it's just so incredible because like you can feel the vibrations like in your body. So in short, I've tried almost everything, and I don't think there's one solution that I'll be sticking with in my journey, but a holistic approach, and yoga will always have my heart, especially yin and hatha.
mhm.
So yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, yeah, I had, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'd gone to like a gong sound bath with my husband. My husband actually took teacher training, yoga teacher training, but he never became a teacher. We knew he wouldn't. He just wanted to
Yeah.
take a deeper dive. He's way too introverted to like do
Oh.
public speaking. But he did. So during his training, they had a retreat weekend, and they did a gong sound bath thing. And I was like, I'd never done that, and I was able to
Hmm.
attend. And they were like, get comfortable. You could bring a blanket, you could bring a pillow or whatever. And I remember laying on my mat and being in the room with these things.
Yeah.
Like they're massive, and this man set up like a bunch of different stands, and I was like, holy, it was so elaborate.
Oh yeah. It gets
And I
intense.
was just like, part of me, like I'm always as like woo woo as I can be. I've always got one foot firmly in the skeptical side. I'm like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Um, and then they started going, and it was so, I feel like it felt like it was 90 minutes. It couldn't have possibly been that long, but I was weeping. I was just like,
Oh.
it was like I could feel it in my body, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
It
Oh
blew
yeah.
my mind. I mean, it was like somebody wrung me out, and I was like, I don't know what just shifted out of me, but I think it's been there for a really long time.
Oh yeah. It's
And
incredible.
so powerful, yeah. And so I know the power of sound, and like you're saying, especially with like when you can pop in like headphones or AirPods and hear so clearly, like sound bowls and
Yeah.
stuff. It's the same impact for sure, because it's like in your cranial bones, and like you can,
Definitely.
oh, it's so profound.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I actually got my first singing bowl too. So
Yay.
that's also really exciting. And I want to start to build a collection.
Yeah. And well, and they're so beautiful. They're just on their own. They
Yeah.
don't even have to make noise. They're just so pretty.
Exactly. They're gorgeous.
Oh, that is awesome. One thing I found interesting, and I don't know if you'll remember, because I don't know how long ago you recorded that first episode of your podcast before like I heard it.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned going through this period of grief, and you used the term that you were spiritually bypassing yourself.
Yes.
And I was like, so you do remember speaking on that, yeah? And
Yes. I
and so I
remember.
thought that was so, because clearly, for reference, like well before I was a yoga teacher, I was a home birth midwife, so I homeschooled my kids for a while. Like I've moved in some pretty crunchy circles and communities.
Yeah.
And I've known like all sorts of people along the way, and that's like greatly enriched our lives as a family for sure. Just to like be introduced to all these different ways of living and believing, but anytime that you have a spiritual community, and I'm going to just use that as an umbrella term, right? Because that could mean like a faith through an organized religion or what have you. You get it, right? So like
Yeah.
anytime you have a spiritual community or an intentional community, even, there is this tendency to bypass
Yes.
each other, or figures in power and authority bypassing like the people who are below them. And then when you said spiritually bypassing myself, and I was like, oh shit, like that's real because one, we kind of in this like capitalist society where it's like productivity equals our self-worth and our value,
Yes.
that it's so easy to bypass ourselves. And then when we throw in that spiritual side, I'm just like, oh, we are so sick.
I know. We get
We're so
deep into
sick.
these sacred spaces. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah. So, sorry, that was a lot of my own like kind of
No,
reckoning when you
it's
said
so
that.
relevant.
But
And it's so, I love hearing other, because I haven't really talked to anybody about the concept of it. So I just love hearing other perspectives on the concept of spiritual bypassing, because a lot of us aren't even aware that we do it.
yeah, so can I ask you to
Yeah.
speak on that more, as you talked about it in your podcast?
Yes, definitely. Because I just said the word and then I didn't even like go in depth, which I want to do a whole episode on spiritual
Yeah, I was gonna
bypassing
say
and like,
put a pin in it, future podcast episode.
yes, no, definitely. And like how it affects the body. But I can like do a little
Yeah.
short summary, of course, um, and what it meant to me, because to me, it just meant that like, like the Buddha state of just being like enlightened and just like, I feel no fear or no grief or I fear no. Do you hear anything in the background? Do I need to move? Oh, okay, you're
No, I
good.
don't.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, awesome. My AirPods are good at noise cancellation. Um, like I don't feel any fear. I don't feel any like lower, heavier emotions like anger, grief. I'm just like this lovely, enlightened, like always smiling, palatable being who, even like when I'm alone, it was to the point where I was so disconnected from my emotions and my own body, because I was just so obsessed with reaching this impossible state of being this perfect human who just constantly has like the my higher self orchestrating my life with no human emotions. I was just so obsessed with that to the point where I just did not allow myself to feel the heavier, deeper emotions sitting in my hips and my stomach and my lungs. And I just actually just I feel like it was an out of body experience. And for some people, that could be like very woo woo, but I genuinely did not feel like I was in my body. I felt like I was in somewhere outside of the universe, floating in the air and not in my body. So sorry, I'm like losing my train of thought a little bit, but
No, well,
basically,
like you were so disconnected from yourself because you
yeah,
denied any negative emotion. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And that is what it meant for me, is just me constantly turning to like these sacred texts. And like I remember during that time I started reading like the Bhagavad Gita and just doing all these things besides feeling my emotions. And I think all I needed to do was just acknowledge that I was at such a low point and that it was okay and that that's still spiritual too. Like I've had this idea of spirituality being love and light and not just the whole picture of being a human being, and all of it's spiritual. And that's something my energy worker always tells me, because I tend to separate like my human experience and like my higher self or whatever else is out there guiding me. And
Mhm.
she always has to tell me like it's all one. Like your low points are a part of the spiritual experience. And I think that's something really hard to remember when you're in a low point, but I'm learning.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you've got to go into the walls of your mind and tear down the good vibes only posters.
Yes, literally.
You're like, no,
Literally.
we can have really bad vibes and it's okay.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all welcome. And it's like, oh, nobody wants to look at the shadow, but
Right,
I've learned so much from my shadow. So,
for sure. I was gonna say many historically, right? Like so much has been written, art has been made about like for thousands of years, the people when they're in their dark night of the soul, like just in
yeah.
the pits of despair, and it's horrible to be there, but what can be gleaned from
Yes.
being in that space and not just being like, no, I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
okay. You
So
know?
literally, literally, like, just, I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't worry. As you're like dying on the
Right.
side. That's so
So,
funny.
there's a lot of beauty to be found in those dark spaces, and
Yes. a
we've got to,
100%.
yeah. I appreciate that. And I just, yeah, I'm going to keep thinking about that term. And like, I was like, ooh, like it's almost like a post-it note in my head. Like, am I spiritually bypassing myself? Because also
Yeah.
we're very conditioned to be like, no, we're fine. Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
You know, and being nice
Exactly.
and particularly always stuffing down anger and, those things.
Yeah.
They're not nice. They're ugly emotions. And like, we know this, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I don't know. So I hope you keep being reminded to lean into
Oh, yeah.
that.
Definitely. I have to remind myself almost every day. So
Yeah.
it's still a
And
part
then
of my journey.
and for people who may not resonate perhaps with the language of this as we were talking about it, I would like to
Yes.
also point out that like sometimes this bypassing that we do to ourselves comes by getting home from work and binge watching Netflix for 6 hours, or
Yes.
having like or drinking 2 bottles of wine every night after work just so you can like not feel like whatever it is to numb and distract,
Yeah.
right, is similarly
Exactly.
methods
And
of action.
yeah, 100% agree. And something that I realized that I was doing that I didn't realize I was doing until I lived alone is that I would constantly spend time with other people, like all
Mm,
the time, even though at heart, like I'm pretty introverted and I do like need to recharge, but I was sacrificing my own energy just to distract myself by hanging out with other people. And like it's really easy to perform for other people when they're right in front of you. It's really hard to perform for yourself alone. And so that's what was yeah, that was the most um transformative part of my whole dark night of the soul situation, is like time alone for me, like just made me realize like, you can't hide from these parts of yourself. And time alone, of course, not consuming anything, as you
right,
just said.
right, like literally just being like, wow. Me
Yeah,
and these walls, right, me and these walls. um
exactly.
so I have two more questions for you. One of
Yes.
them is, what moments of your day or even of your week, or both, do you really savor as far as like
Ooh.
your own? I know you said you're living alone now, and that has been a good
Yes.
for you. Um, but obviously you go out into the world, you have things that you do, friends that you see, work that you go to, but like what alone time moments do you really gift your?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question because I'm trying to get myself to pay more attention to these moments, especially as I transition back to going into work and like making sure I'm not overwhelmed by work and just making sure to hold those sacred moments as um as equal weight as my, working moments or like my productive moments. And so
Mhm.
moments that I especially cherish are any mornings that I can ease into and move very slowly and do one of your yoga classes on Patreon plug. Or I especially loved your yoga in bed class. I've been doing that one.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah, like right when I wake up and I'm like, let me put on Amanda's yoga in bed class because it's amazing. And I have always wanted to do yoga in my bed. But anyways, so mornings, slow mornings when I can, and watching the sunrise because luckily I can see the sunrise from my apartment where I live right now. And drinking tea. Usually I drink tea at night. So mornings, basically my sacred moments are right when I wake up and right before I go to bed. And right before I go to bed is usually when I play the sound bowl meditation that I mentioned earlier, or bang on my own singing bowl, or and usually I've been drinking a lot of chamomile tea just to ease my anxiety. And those moments, just being as present as possible in them, have just helped so much in all aspects of my life. So those are the moments throughout my week that I look forward to, especially. And I love getting to do it on a Saturday or a Sunday because I have no set time. I need to be somewhere usually, unless
Right.
I, make plans or something like that. But it's so much better doing doing it on the weekend because, I won't be at work all day. I can like actually like savor those moments intentionally.
Lovely. Thank you. Um,
Yeah.
so my last question was kind of very similar to that first to that question, or perhaps the way that you answered it. I'm like, okay, you just kind of did, but I'm going to say it anyway. So
Yeah.
Esther Perel she's a great therapist and she has a great podcast called Where Do We Begin?
Yep.
And good stuff. But one of her things that in a newsletter a few months ago um, that I read from her, it was, she says, can you, in the course of your day or days or week, differentiate routines from rituals? And like looking at
Ooh.
those two things as like, we all have routines, right? Every single day,
Yeah.
like we get up, we do our thing. And that's exactly like clearly your headspace is already like,
Yeah.
I really like this cup of chamomile tea. I like to fall asleep listening to the sound bowl. I like to wake up and see the sunrise or, like,
Yeah.
um, but this idea of looking at, because I like the idea of ritual versus routine because it's a way to um, observe that all of us are already um, taking care of ourselves through
Yes.
our routines, but it's just like the perspective of like savoring those moments. I really love the smell of butter when I put it on my toast, or
Yeah.
or feeling, the texture of my blankets and things like that. So just those moments. Are there anything outside of what you said about savoring that
Yes.
that you have rituals that are like just very specific or
Oh, I love this question, and I love the discourse between routine and ritual because I do think many of our routines are rituals, depending on the weight of that word for certain people. I definitely view my routines as rituals, and I do think that one thing that I do every single day is shower. And I usually shower at night and I light a candle, and that feels very ritualistic to me. Just seeing like the candlelight dancing like in my bathroom walls. I usually play music. It just feels very sacred. I also saw a quote online was like start treating your, you know, showers as rituals and like think of it as like an energetic cleansing process of like ridding yourself of any energy that you have on you that you also want to get rid of. And in a literal sense, you are doing that, with like any, dirt from the day or sweat or anything. But I think it's also beautiful to imagine it, cleansing any energy in your that you may have picked up from work, or like if you're just having a bad day, just imagining it. Of course, I don't want to like overdo it and get into spiritually bypassing, but I do think it can be very healthy just to imagine like any like gross feeling emotions that you may have been feeling throughout the day, just washing off of your body and like going down into the drain and back into the earth, and like returning back into the cycle of the emotional, you know, feelings that we feel. I'm getting really philosophical now, but like I genuinely do. I know I took it there, but I genuinely do feel like that's what you said. You would always say, as thoughts come into your head, let them go, do not go with them. And I started taking that approach to my emotions, because I'll have like an emotional, a little bit of an emotional breakdown. I'm like, oh my God, like, it feels like the end of the world, and then it passes. And I think just this ritualistic act of being in the shower and imagining those emotions that feel impossible rinsing away, it's been one of my favorite rituals.
Yeah. Well, it's so good because you can feel it, and it's such an easily, it's fairly easy to visualize. And I would argue too that it's not bypassing, because in order to like release it, you have to identify it, right?
That's true. Be
So if
aware
you're
of it.
like, that bitch at work said da 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 da, and and sometimes your brain can be like getting into the imagined fight,
Yeah.
with the which is like, it's always funny to me when I catch myself in that, and I'm like, what are we doing?
Right.
Stop it. But I also think maybe our brains need that sometimes, just to go through a little bit of and then like, okay,
Oh yeah.
let it go.
100%.
Because it's easy to spiral in the icky thing, but
Just
but I
lay it
think, yeah,
out.
like when you're like, yeah, that pissed me off, or that hurt my feelings, or I'm really embarrassed about, and then it's like, what can I do about
Yeah.
it right now?
That
There it
healthy,
is. Let it go.
exactly. The point of it not letting it overtake you, but still acknowledging it, like that sweet spot is like where you can release it. And as someone who thinks in extremes, I'm still learning that I don't have to either be numbed out or like feel it all the way. Like I can actually find a sweet spot. So sorry.
That's okay.
Basically, I realized that what you just said, spot on, like allow yourself to feel it and let it go.
Right. And if it comes back, you'd be like, hey, I see you're back. What do we need to talk about?
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. It's like
Uh,
what more do we need to discuss here?
right, right.
And I love viewing them as like visitors and not like a part of you,
Right.
because then you can really start to feel more like in control of your states of being.
Right. Right. And realize that it's not permanent. That's what's so threatening,
Yeah,
right? Is that, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person because I'm feeling this, or I'm broken because I'm feeling that. Like, nothing is permanent, right? So
exactly.
it's cycles.
100% agree.
Um,
Cycles of life.
well, I appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and your insight, and just you being on this earth, walking around, doing the
Ah,
stuff that you do.
thank
Sincerely.
you.
And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to please talk a little bit, or just tell us about your podcast and your intentions with it.
Yes. Yes, definitely. So I started a podcast last week called The Body as a Compass. And essentially, I just realized that the whole point of my wellness journey is to feel as safe and in tune with the rhythms of my body as possible. And I had this realization all of a sudden off of an edible. I was like, I do think, like, what if the meaning of life is to feel safe in our bodies? And I just started to spur all these ideas of just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I have so many things I could say about the body and like what I've learned personally about the body and how it's just so intelligent. It knows so much more than the human mind will ever be able to comprehend. And so I started a podcast called The Body as a Compass, and I'm going to be talking about so many things and what I've learned from, like, following this model image of a spiritual person and, like abstaining from drugs and alcohol and even sex, or what I've learned, like going back into those things and how we can find a balance, and also just other things too that I'm going to pull from like scientific research about the nervous system and anxiety and depression, and just so many topics to come. But basically, feel free to look it up. It's called
I will
the,
definitely
the
link
body
to it.
Oh yes, perfect.
Yes.
I can send you the link.
I'm sorry,
So
but
you
say
can
the
add it
title
to
again. I cut you off. Forgive me.
Don't worry. The Body as a Compass.
I love that. I love that.
Yes. Thank you.
Um, awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me, and I appreciate you. And I look forward to more episodes and hearing you speak on whatever's on your heart and mind, because that is like my jam.
Yay. Yes. I am so glad to hear that, especially coming from you. So
Oh golly,
warms
no.
my heart.
Oh, well, big love to you, friend. I appreciate you. And
Yes.
yeah,
I
and if you
appreciate
ever
you
have any
too.
suggestions for a yoga class, this is like the start of the class. What do you want to do today? Please let me know.
Right.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Tyler. I'll see you later.
Thank
Bye.
you, Amanda. Bye.